Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Soulpreneur Scaling Stories. I'm really excited to have Jemma Broadstock here with me, who is a coach for entrepreneurs and is going to share something I think that a lot of you guys can relate to and will be really interesting. So, hey, Jemma, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm really excited. Please introduce yourself. Let us know what you do, what your business looks like today.
Yeah, so I'm Jemma. I am a coach for mostly service providers, but I do work with a range of entrepreneurs. My background is psychology. So actually everything that I do is very kind of psychology infused, very research led. And my whole thing is creating happier CEOs because I have been on a journey over the years and I have been the person that's not been particularly happy. And I've also worked with a lot of clients who are kind of thriving from the outside, but not necessarily happy behind the scenes. So my whole thing is, how can we make you happier and make you love your business even more?
And I love this for many a reason. And one is because, yes, success doesn't necessarily equal happiness. And so I love that mission that you have to be like, you know what? Like, that's actually the most important thing is to be happy and not necessarily just to be, successful, which depending on how you define success, right? Because if you're not happy, are you successful? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And I think part of the problem is maybe that we don't take the time to define success. We kind of just assume, oh, success is, it's money and it's the nice house and it's, the nice clothes and the holidays, because that's what we're told success is. And I think a big
Right,
part of the problem is we don't stop to ask, is that our version of success? So you end up chasing
right.
something, getting it and being like, oh, this doesn't actually feel good. I don't feel any better than I did, years ago. So yeah, that's something that me and my clients work on a lot. It's, what is success to you? It's a big question, but an important one.
Oh, super important because I'm sure I've been down the road of a few different roads of creating something and being like, oh yeah, like I'm making the money that I'm quote unquote supposed to make, right? Some of the goal money and still being unhappy doing it and being like, wait, like, why am I doing this? And it's not until for me, I define what is success for me. And then it's not all focused around money, and the money then flows even more easily because you know the why behind it, and there's more purpose there, and so you're more excited, and it's such a huge piece of all of this.
Yeah, exactly. And I would be naive to think that people don't really care about money or any of those things. Money is important. When we run businesses, we do need an income. We do need to be making money. It's really important. But I think the thing that I always remind myself, at least, is, research has shown really clearly that if we are not happy on the way towards something, we're not going to be happy when we get the thing either. And so if you stop and look at your business right now and you're telling yourself, I don't enjoy this, but I'll be happy when I get there, we know that's not true. And so it's just like, well, if you're not happy now and you're not going to be happy when you get there, it's time to change something, because otherwise you're just going to be so unhappy that, and we all see this, that you end up getting a job or you end up walking away from it all and you think that the problem was you. And actually, the likelihood is you were just looking for the wrong things.
Mm. And it's funny too because most of us have had jobs, had the 9 to 5, the corporate or whatnot, and left because we weren't happy in those jobs for this life. So getting down to the root core of the why and really living that is, I would argue, one of the most important things, right? Because otherwise, exactly, why are we doing this? Why are we working so much? Why are we putting our blood, sweat, and tears into building this thing if it's just to make money, but there's nothing behind it? Because because then you might as well just go get a job because that's a lot easier than what we're choosing to do.
Exactly. And I do think it's easier said than done, right? Because we start
Totally.
businesses for this idea of freedom and flexibility and being able to do what we want. And then when you get into business, it's actually completely different. It's like quite a hustle mindset. And it's like work, 100-hour weeks and keep going until you get there and do all of the things and juggle all of the social media platforms. And it's like, what are we doing here? Like, we're kind of just
Right.
creating a life that we don't enjoy and telling ourselves, well, one day we'll get to the life that we enjoy. But how long do we chase one day for before we realize actually it's not coming and we need to do something different?
Right. And do you even know what this life is that you're going for, right? That doesn't actually exist, but not even having an idea of what it actually means to you to be happy, quote unquote, what it means to you to like, what does freedom actually look like for you? Because it's different for everybody. So knowing those things and having this goal, and it also helps you to make decisions, right, for your business when you know what the quote unquote end goal is, when you know what freedom looks like, when you know what happiness looks like for you, then it's so much easier when you're in your business to be like, oh, that's a yes to that. That leads me directly to that thing or not, right? Like everything is so much better once you figure that piece out.
Yes, exactly. And I think when you're struggling to make decisions in business, or you don't know what the sort of right or wrong thing for you is, that does tend to come back to that lack of clarity around your vision and your big goals and what you're here to do and what you're trying to achieve in the world. Because when you're super clear on where you're going and you know what your destination is, it's actually quite easy to look at an option, an opportunity and say, does this get me closer? Yes or no? But actually, when you don't know where you're going, it's like, how can you answer a question when you don't know the destination? And so I think actually, as much as it's kind of, I guess, more sexy to work on the money and the offers and all those kinds of things, this sort of work, it trickles down into everything else. And I do really believe that knowing what you're doing, knowing why you're doing it, having that purpose, it's kind of like the foundation everything else is built on, in my opinion.
No, I 100% agree with you, 100%. Because I've been on both sides of it. And I tell you, it's much better on this side. Right? It's much better on the side of, I know what happiness is for me. I know what freedom means for me. I know what my mission is. I know what my vision is. And everything that I do is in service to that. Versus okay, I started this business and I'm going to grow to, and make money and then do it all these random ways that like let my business lead me, or somebody wants this thing and say, okay, I'll do that service too. And and just and just feel so like you're chasing your tail. You're like, you're squirrel, and just like not having any of this clarity, and along the way getting really burnt out, and because there is no clarity there. So it is very important. And I think it is sexy. I'm going to challenge you on that. I think it is sexy to be like, I know what my vision is. I know what my mission is. I know it's going to make me happy in this world. I think not a lot of people can say that. So I think it is sexy.
No, I love that. And I love that you're challenging me on that, because I do agree with you. I think so too. And I think that's kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning. I'm like, how can we share that message more? And how can we get more people saying, actually, that's really sexy? And I know exactly what my big dreams are. I think there's fear a lot of the time around saying, actually, my vision is this. My really big dream is this. I want to change the world in this way. But actually, like, there's nothing I enjoy more than those conversations. We love to hear what people are passionate about. I don't care what the thing is. It could be cycling or bird watching. If you're going to tell me how excited you are about it and how it's going to change the world, I'm in there with you. I'm excited too. Right. And I think the more people that are able to confidently share those big dreams, the better for everyone else.
Yes, we're paving the way. Okay, so on that note, I would love to get back, because you were, back in the day, a service provider. So I would love to hear about your journey and all of the twists and turns along the way. So if we go back in our time machine and go back to when you started your business, what did it look like at the beginning, and when was that?
Oh gosh, chaotic. So this would have been, well, depending on how far we go back. So I actually started freelancing when I was 16, which is
oh my goodness,
12 years ago. So I've been kind of in the online space for a really long time, but it was always a side hustle that I did on top of something else. And I didn't really have a niche or a speciality. I just kind of did whatever you wanted me to do. Then in 2018, I was made redundant and just was really struggling to find work. And so I started to do the freelancing a bit more seriously, was taking on more stuff. And so 2019 was when I was like, right, I'm going to do this as my full-time thing. So that's kind of when my business started. I was a VA, and that wasn't very intentional, to be completely honest. I didn't sit there and think I'm going to be a VA for the rest of my life. It was just a case of, I need to make money. This needs to be able to work from home. What skills do I have? I am the kind of annoying person that organizes everything. Like, I cannot walk past a mess without tidying up. If you're messy, I'm going to like take your hand and organize your life for you. Like, I just can't help myself. So it made sense to be a VA. And I kind of started signing a few clients. And at this point, it was so messy. I can't even tell you. It was chaotic. I had no idea what to charge. I didn't know anything about boundaries. I didn't know anyone else in the business world. So I had no one to kind of compare notes with. I was signing some nice clients, but also some not very nice ones. And it was just really hard, honestly, those first kind of 6 months or so. And so again, it was a situation where things were working, but not feeling very good.
Yeah. And I do want to, it came to my mind that you said, okay, like I got into this and I became a VA because, yeah, I had these skills and let's just see. And I wanted to call attention to the fact that that's perfectly valid. And not for you to like, I know you know, but like for people listening, right? Like you don't have to, like that can be your entryway or it could be the thing that you really want to do forever. Like, it doesn't matter, you know? So because I had a similar experience when I started as a VA as well, in that I was like, oh, you know, my original thought, because I also have a psychology background, yay, is that, oh, I can be a life coach or something. But it's like, I don't know how to run an online business. So I was like, you know what? Like, I can figure out this VA thing and see how people run their businesses and then just like figure it out from there. Just kind of like get in and like just start taking action. So for anybody listening who is like, oh, well, you know, I'm doing this, but I don't know what my end goal is, like perfect, because you're going to figure out by doing stuff. Like action leads to the next step. So I think that is very common, you know, that people just kind of like fall into this thing because it is a very catch-all situation. And I lost all of my train of thought. So we'll just continue on down with your story, or if you have any other thoughts, you know, on that piece as well.
No, I agree. I think that is really important to highlight alongside what we said at the beginning, because if you're an early stage business owner, you might be thinking, well, how on earth do I figure out my big vision and my dreams when like I'm just using a skill that I've got to try and get by. And I totally agree that initially you've just got to move. I think is my biggest piece of advice. Like just move, do what you can. And at that time, what I had was access to the internet and a very organized brain. And so I just used those two things to provide a service in order to get paid. And my focus was at that point, it was like, how do I survive? How do I pay the rent? And then the next stage of like, what do I actually want to do had to come later. And so if you're in a stage where you're thinking, how on earth do I feed my kids? It might not be the time to stop and think about what's the big dream. And I think there's a stage for everything. So yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes it's just you do what you can and you move.
Yeah. And I mean, imagine if you hadn't done that and you just sat around thinking like, what's my perfect business? Like you would never know because you don't have the experience.
Yeah.
So having all of those, you know, and I think too, like not having the boundaries is so like it's such a rite of passage to like and to learn how to put those boundaries in place as you're, you know, especially for service providers. It's such a big deal and it's something to be celebrated. And I had the same thing where it's like, okay, yes, whatever you want, I'm here for you. And you think that's how it has to be at the beginning. And it feels really good when you figure out that no, that's not how it has to be.
100%. And I think that's where community comes in too, right? Because when you're just isolated on your own, you don't know what you don't know. But when you're surrounded by other people who are kind of going through the same thing, or maybe they're a couple months or a couple years ahead of you, you start to realize like, oh, I don't have to say yes to that. Or, oh, I'm really undercharging compared to the market. And again, those are things that you just do not know on day one. And that is fine. Like it gets to be messy because I mean, I was going to say it's not always messy, but it's probably always a little bit messy behind the scenes, let's be honest. But it's a different kind of mess. It's a more kind of in control mess, organized mess.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so you had your 6 months of not know you know, like, okay, I'm doing everything with no boundaries and making money. And then what happened after that?
So for some reason, I signed clients really easily. And I realize I'm not giving myself a lot of credit there, but I think I was just really ambitious and I was like, this is going to work. I think I'd had a few years of like being doubted by everyone. I was like, this is going to work. I'm going to make it work. And so I was doing all of the outreach. I was connecting with people. And before I knew it, I was sold out. And I started to figure out what the next step was. And this is so common. I know so many people do this. I was like, oh, an agency. That's the logical next step, right? Like,
did we have the same business? Did we have the same journey? I think that we did.
Honestly, I don't. And again, I just didn't stop and think. I didn't stop and think.
No, because, okay, wait, but this is not your fault because this is the thing that I want to change. And because I did this recently, if you Google, how do you scale a VA business? That's literally the only thing that comes up in Google. Or that's the only advice you hear until you connect with people like you and like me who like, no, you don't have to do that. Like there's a gazillion things that you can do. So like, when you're in these, you know, kind of like the big giant programs or, you know, like this is what you hear. It's like, oh, you're a VA, then you're a VA agency. And like, that's just how it goes. So this is not your fault in any way, and not mine either. It's just like that's what we were told. That's like the way that you do it, and you're like, okay, and like without stopping and be like, do I actually want an agency? Or like, oh, I'm getting all of these clients, I can't do the work, so I'll hire people to help. And then you're like, wait, why am I doing that? Like, it's not until afterwards, and you're like, why did I do that? So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And this is actually, I'm really glad that I did this because I now
Mm-hmm.
work with so many clients who are like, oh, well, I guess I'm supposed to do this. And I'm like, wait a minute, do you want to do that? And actually, I think it's really kind of shifted how I work with my clients. So I'm glad that I did it. But yeah, it was a headfirst dive into working with so many clients. I think at our busiest, we had 25 clients, something like that. And I had a team who were amazing, but like I'd never managed a team in that way before. And it was a lot. Like it felt like every day I woke up and there was a new thing that I was having to deal with that I'd never dealt with before. And it was really exciting at the same time. I will say this, like to see something growing and being successful and people wanting to work with me and being in that position where, we were getting messages every day, like, when can I work with you? It was a really good feeling, but it didn't really give me any space to live. The agency was kind of my entire life. And I didn't really have a life outside of that. And over time, I was like, I don't know if this is where I'm meant to be. Because, like, as you know, my background is psychology and kind of helping people in a more mentoring, coaching background. And so I was like, I kind of miss that. I want to be helping these people, but doing something differently. And I felt that a lot of my clients, they were thinking they needed a VA, but actually they hadn't done the other piece of work, which was figuring out what they wanted out of their business. And so I was kind of trying to figure out what to do. My boyfriend actually was the thing that made me kind of put it all down for a minute because we went on holiday together and I was just crying. I was getting up at like 5, 6 in the morning to do work before he got up. And I had clients ringing me. There was this one client who was in the middle of a launch and she was like making me cry because she was shouting at me down the phone. And he was just
While you're on holiday.
While I was on holiday and I was having the worst time. And my boyfriend was like, this is not sustainable. Like, I don't care what you do, but it cannot be this. And so that was the first moment that I was like, maybe this is not where I'm going to spend the rest of my life.
It's so powerful when, like, you tell the story and you're like, yeah, it's kind of obvious, but it's not when you're living it at all, And to have somebody point that out and to have it click, you're like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful thing.
And I definitely resisted that too. I was like, but you don't.
Well, because you built this whole you built this whole thing from nothing, which is amazing.
Yeah. And he also wasn't working in a business. He was employed. And I was like, you just don't get it. Like, it's meant to be hard. I'm meant to be crying every day. It's meant to be this horrible hustle. I'm meant to hate my life. So there was this like real push and pull of, I know I don't feel good, but also is this not how it's meant to feel? And what's the alternative? So it was a real like moment of first acknowledging like I'm not that happy, but also being like, well, what else do I do? Because this is working really well. And I think it's really hard to walk away from something that's successful.
Yes. Oh yeah, totally. So I think that's such a point that to really just bring to the surface because it's successful in that you're making the income, right? Like you have the money, you're making the income. From the outside, people would say, oh, Jemma, like she has this agency, she has all these clients, like it's running, like amazing. Like I want to be that. I want to be like her, not knowing that you're crying when you're on holiday, that, people are yelling, but all these things are going on. So what made you, so him telling you, obviously, wait, hold on a second. And then what was the thing that was going on internally when you're like, should I do something else? Like what was kind of going on in that during that time? Because that's a really scary time.
It was.
Or it can be.
Yeah. I'm going to be completely honest. Internally, not a lot was going on because I was just ignoring it. I was just like, if I power through, there's something better on the other side. And so I didn't really stop to think about me or what I was feeling. And instead I was like, right, let me action something. And so I got rid of a bunch of clients that I felt were my kind of least fulfilling clients. And then what happened was I had less clients and less money, but I still felt just as rubbish. And I was like, oh, maybe it's not the clients. And so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
You're like, okay, like, let me see. Maybe if I just get rid of these like shitty clients, then it'll be fine. And it wasn't.
Yeah.
So telling. Yeah.
And I started getting rid of like more. I was like, oh, maybe if I get rid of this one. Honestly. And then I stopped kind of signing more clients. I was like, let me close the books for a minute because I kind of just don't want any new clients. So what was happening was I wasn't consciously making a decision really, but I wasn't accepting new clients. I was gradually getting rid of my current clients to the point where I had maybe 3 left, which was a big drop from, the agency before. I'd had to let the team go. And it kind of just felt like I'd resisted for so long that like life was making it happen because those final 3 all handed in their notice essentially at the same time. And so
Oh,
it
wow.
wasn't even really that I was like, I'm closing this agency down. It was just that I waited so long and did nothing to the point where it happened, whether I liked it or not. And that was
The
kind of
universe was like, the universe was like, okay, you're not making this decision, so we're going to make it for you.
exactly.
Like,
That's
that's
exactly how
crazy.
it felt.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
at that point that all the internal stuff hit me because also it was coming up to Christmas. We had just moved house, which was a big deal because we moved to the beach, but our rent had like tripled. And at that point, my boyfriend had left his job. So it was all my income that was paying for everything. I just hit my first 6-figure year, which felt like a big deal. But then I'd kind of let everything go. And I was like, I also won a business award. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I just won an award for a business that essentially doesn't exist anymore. I was just, oh my gosh, my head was all over the place.
I can't even imagine. Like, it's crazy that all of that it's crazy and not at the same time because this is just how things go. But I can't imagine what happened internally when all of this was happening externally because you kind of pushed that all to the side. So it must have been just a whole thing, that was going on.
It was a real identity crisis for me too, because like I said, the agency was my entire life. And it felt like for the first time in my life, I was kind of proud of who I was. I was like, oh, I'm Jemma, I'm the business owner. And I was getting a lot of external validation too from, my family who were seeing me win awards and, random cousins I hadn't heard from in 15 years who were like, oh, I would love to work with you. This is really amazing. And I was getting all this like praise. And then I was like, but if I no longer have that, what does that mean about me? Like, if I'm only worthy
Uh,
when I am the successful
yeah,
agency owner, who am I without the
yeah.
agency? And so there was a lot of stuff coming up for me.
And then what were you? Okay, so everything was gone. There were no more clients. You're here with all these expenses, the whole weight on your shoulders. So what did you do? What was going on in that time?
So during that kind of last year, so this was maybe 2021, early 2021, people had started asking me kind of like, how did you do it? How did you get clients? Like, how are you managing the client load? And although I was struggling sort of mentally, I was very good at that side of things. And so I started helping people when I could. I'd run like free trainings here and there. And I really enjoyed that. It was something that really lit me up. And it's something that I think people really enjoyed as well. Like I was getting really good feedback from that. And so I kind of was like, well, maybe that's what I want to do full time. But because I hadn't planned it, and this is one of I don't like to have regrets, but if I was doing this again, I would definitely phase out one side of the business while I introduce the other.
Right, right.
So it was very kind of clunky, but I was like, I think that's what I want to do full time. I want to be mentoring other service providers, helping them not do what I just did, essentially. So I started doing like free trainings. I ran like an end of year workshop, and it just sort of was building very slowly. I think because my confidence was so low and I was really struggling internally with like, who am I? What are people going to think of me? Am I a failure? And all that kind of stuff. I definitely was sort of like tiptoeing into it, which then added to the stress because I wasn't bringing in enough money and it was all this kind of happening. But that was the intention. I was going to be a mentor for service providers and that was going to build up to the same income level.
Okay, so but you kind of got into this, but not really having a plan. It sounds like you're just like, okay, like now I'm going to do this thing, but there was not a lot of planning behind it, which made it ultra stressful, I'm sure, and ultra, very. I'm imagining a very unbalanced nervous system throughout this transition because essentially you're not bringing in income, right? Because you didn't have any more clients, and now you're kind of transitioning into this piece. So it is a very difficult time period. And like you were saying, with the low self-esteem and things like this. So, but you kept on doing it. And what drove you to keep doing that and not kind of give up during that time?
You know, it's funny because I didn't even question getting a job or anything like that. Like, it didn't even cross my mind. I think partly it was I'd seen how much I enjoyed mentoring other people and helping people in that way. And I knew that if I could make that my business, I would be significantly happier. I knew that I would just love to do that. So there was that. But there was also, being completely honest, the fact that I had expenses. I didn't really have a choice. It was like, I need this amount of money to come in, even just to break even. And, you know, my boyfriend couldn't just go and get a job and fix the situation because it was also during COVID. So it was all like, there was a lot happening at once. So it was kind of like, I have no option. It was very much like being at the start again. It was, I need to make this amount of money to live. What do I need to do to make that happen? And so I was just putting in so much effort because I just felt like that was the only option. And I also knew that if I wanted to get to the life I wanted and the lifestyle I wanted, that like this had to happen. Like sitting around and feeling sorry for myself or having a cry, I knew wasn't going to be productive for me. And so, yeah, I don't know. I showed up every day and I continued. I think my boyfriend's answer would be that I was delusional, but you know.
But you know what you said, I like, is so powerful. You're like, there was no other option. And you're like, I really like this and I'm going to do this and I need money and that's it. And it's funny that there was another option. You know, you could have been like, okay, I'll get a client to sustain myself while I do this, but that didn't even occur. That wasn't part of your plan. It was, I'm just going to do this thing. And I think the fact that there was no, or you didn't give yourself the safety net is potentially what kept you on track and kept you going and led to your success. Mm-hmm. If I had to guess.
Yeah. And as much as I don't recommend not giving yourself a safety net, I do think that both initially when I was made redundant and also at this point when the VA business was kind of gone, in both situations, I was left with no backup plan. There was no plan B. I hadn't prepared for it. Both of them felt like they'd come out of nowhere, even though they probably hadn't. And I think that did push me to be like, well, I have to show up. And I think if I'd have been phasing out one business and phasing in a new one, or if I'd had a job and I'd been doing it part-time, I don't think I would have pushed myself in the same way. And so as much as I'm not saying, you know, throw yourself out the plane like I did and be in a crazy situation, I do think it helped me to get where I was going quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah, and I can see that. Like, I can see the benefits of doing that because, like you said, like, I have to do this. And you didn't have any distractions. Like, this is what you focused on all day, right? It was showing up, figuring out this business, getting coaching clients, like things like this. So what else? So what else with your story, kind of continuing the journey? Was it, yeah, like what happens next?
So the big thing I had to get over before I could do anything else was this block in my head that said, you failed at business and therefore you can't mentor or coach. Because at that point, the story I was telling myself was, you failed at everything and yet you're trying to tell people how to run a successful business. And that in my head was just such a big thing. And I get that because it's a valid question, right? It's a valid thing for me to think about. And I think the way that I had to get past that was looking at the evidence. Like, I know how to build a successful business. I know how to sign good clients. I know how to run the systems. I know how to do all the things. I just realized it wasn't for me. That doesn't mean I can't help other people. But also it made me think about what I really enjoy. And actually what I realized was it wasn't necessarily the strategy side of things. It was the mindset stuff, which is what I'd always been really good at. And so I decided rather than just doing how to get clients and how to set up your business and that kind of thing, which is what I've been focusing on, I was going to go all in on the mindset stuff. And so then it required like a big brand pivot and, you know, new colors, new logo, all those kinds of things, and kind of just like relaunching myself as like this new person. And also telling the world that I no longer have my VA business because it was something a lot of people were asking me about. And that was really playing into, am I a fraud? And so I knew I needed to share the story and it resonated with people really well. And I felt just such relief after getting it out into the world. And then it was a case of kind of building from scratch again. I obviously had an audience. I had at that point about 10,000 Instagram followers. So I had people there to work with my new services. So it definitely wasn't as hard as it could have been, but it was a completely different style of business. I always say this, like, just because you could be a service provider doesn't mean you can be a coach or mentor because the marketing is so different.
The marketing is, yeah. For me, I'll say that was the biggest learning curve was the marketing piece of it. And and yeah, kind of growing into that and what to share and how to share and what that looks like. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was slower. I will say that. The VA stuff, it kind of took off overnight, whereas it took a bit more time to build this. And I do think part of that was probably my confidence and all that kind of stuff that was going on mindset wise for me. But yeah, so then it was just experimenting and essentially starting again with a whole new business, which was really humbling. I'm going to be honest. Like, it was such a good reminder of what it's like in those early days when you're not necessarily signing clients straight away, or content doesn't quite hit in the way you want it to. Yeah. And then I kind of just grew from there. The last few years, I've refined my offering. I've gone back into my master's. So I'm doing another master's in coaching psychology and positive psychology, because I really now know that what I want to help people with is that part of being happier in your business. Like, how can you thrive? How can you feel joy every day? That's what I really love. And so that's what I do now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that entire journey, because there's so many gems in there that people can relate to. And thank you also for sharing so vulnerably, because this is also a goal of mine, is to actually share the truth behind what's going on, to kind of combat these gurus who just like, you can make 10K in 2 days and it's so easy and all of these things, right? Because it's not, but it's so worth it. Do you feel so with all of these ups and downs? Do you feel like that? Like, do you feel like, oh, this was so worth it and I would do this again because of all the growth that you had?
100%. And it's funny because I look back on some of the more challenging times and I now think, oh, have fun. Because
I think that's
they kind of were.
right. Because of being able to look back and be like, look at what I did and look at what I went through and how much I grew from that, not just in business, but it affects every area of your life. And you become such a more confident, or at least I have, become such a more confident person who's been sort of forced, quote unquote, to like dig deep and learn all of these things. And it's so rewarding when you get to the other side and know that you did that. Not only did you build one business, you built two successful businesses. And yourself, like digging yourself out of the trenches and growing into somebody who is amazing, and you get to share this story now to inspire other people. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, are you kidding? Like, that's amazing.
Yeah. We all know that when we push ourselves to do something that's a bit scary, we feel better afterwards. It might be challenging in the moment, but afterwards you think, wow, I did that. And I think the great thing about business is you get to do that every day. But in the moment, it can often feel a bit like, oh my gosh, I just want to go for a nap, or I just want to have an easy day. I don't want to make decisions. But when you look back on yesterday, you think, wow, I navigated that. I did that. And I think that's a blessing and a curse. So when I look back, I think, there were really hard moments. There were. And there was a lot of self-doubt and a lot of growth personally. But I wouldn't change any of it, because it was good and bad at the same time. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, is that with every good thing comes a challenge. Like, you maybe grow to 30,000 followers tomorrow, but then, you get your first hate mail. There's always going to be challenges with the good stuff. And I think it's just me remembering that just because a challenge happened, it doesn't remove the good thing. It's having both at the same time.
Yeah. And knowing that now you have the evidence, right, that you were able to get through those challenges. So, you trust yourself more, that like, you know what, like, I know something's going to pop up and I know that I can do it. And growing that self-trust is so important, because then that gives you the freedom to do what you want, to play around, to experiment, and be like, you know what, I'm going to try this because I know I can figure it out. Yeah. And that's where having a really successful business that you love, that feels aligned, that like, that's where all that comes from. So if everything was so easy from day one and you never had any challenges, then that would be, one, boring, and two, it would, you would never get to the place where like you're so like excited and like in love with your business every day,
Yeah. And
I don't know, I feel like that.
Bringing my kind of like nerdy psychology into it, like, everyone kind of has heard of flow, right? And a big part of flow is that if the thing you're doing is easy, you're not going to enjoy it. If the thing you're doing is really hard, you're not going to enjoy it. There's like this sweet spot where you're being pushed, where you're capable, but it's like, oh, this is a stretch. And that's the part where we get really lost in the task and we feel really fulfilled and it's really fun. And I think business actually requires us to kind of be in that zone a lot of the time. And it's very easy to think, oh my gosh, another challenge. But actually, like, that's where we thrive as humans. That's where we need to be. And if you were always in the kind of, oh, this is easy stage, like you said, you would look back and you would feel bored. You wouldn't be fulfilled. You'd start to coast in your business. And it's not fun there. It's not a fun place to be.
I love that perspective. If it's too easy, that's not where you want to be. If it's too difficult, if it's too challenging, no, it's in that middle where you're right on the edge, where that makes it interesting. I love that. That's such a good perspective. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any other tips or things that you haven't shared yet that you would love to share as talking about it growing in one's business and things like this?
My advice is always like slow down before you speed up. We all want to get to like tomorrow as quick as possible. We want to tick the things off our list. And I get that because I am the person who wants everything like yesterday. But I think sometimes you've got to pause and actually ask yourself the right questions first. Like sometimes I just sit here and I'm like, what am I doing? What do I actually need to do today? Where am I trying to get to? Because otherwise you end up just ticking through a long to-do list and it doesn't leave you feeling any better because you don't know whether you've done the right things. And so sometimes you do just have to stop and slow down and ask yourself, like, if I want to get to this thing by the end of the year, for example, what do I need to do this month? What do I need to do today? What makes sense for me to prioritize? And just ask yourself those questions before you then speed up again to get where you're going.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm going to add one thing to that, which is something that I learned earlier on that's so important, is that there is no end point and there is no there. So we're always in a rush to do this thing and this thing, but it's never ending because there's always going to be another thing. Or you're like, oh, I want to do this thing now. So to just reiterate what you're saying, yeah, just pause and slow down and enjoy the journey because there is no there, because the there always changes as you get there. Then there's another there and another there and another there. So yes, 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I was just going to say as well, something I have to remind myself is if I had achieved all of my goals tomorrow, would I actually be happy? And the answer is I wouldn't, because I would be like, what do I do now? You know, my goals are the reason I get up every day. So also just reminding yourself that one part of you might want to achieve all the things as soon as possible, but actually the reality of that life probably wouldn't be what you want it to be.
Such a good reminder. Yes. So let us know. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It was really good. Let us know how we can stay in touch with you. If you have any gifts or anything else you want to let everybody know about, now is your chance.
Yeah. So I'm an Instagram girl. So you can find me at instagram.com/Jemma Broadstock if you want to follow kind of me and what I talk about. But also you can find me at The Ultimate CEO, which is where I talk about business and I have all of my offers. By the time this goes out, there will be a freebie. So if you head to my Instagram, link in the bio, there will be some new freebies in there. I also have my own podcast, which you are on. So if you search Behind the Business, you can hear our interview over there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jemma. This was really lovely. And yes, all the things will be linked in the show notes. So yeah, totally. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.